You spent over a decade in a classroom learning how to solve for X and memorize the dates of ancient wars. Yet, when you finally stepped into the real world, you realized you were never taught the one thing that actually dictates your survival. Why is it that the very system designed to prepare you for life left you completely illiterate about wealth? It feels like a massive oversight, but the truth is far more calculated than a simple mistake. There is a hidden architecture behind the modern school system that was never meant to foster financial independence. You have been following a blueprint designed by people who didn't want you to be a leader, but a reliable part of their machine. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the employee factory and the myths that keep millions trapped in a cycle of endless labor. You are about to discover the specific financial secrets that were intentionally scrubbed from your textbooks. This is the education you were never supposed to receive, and it begins right now. To understand why you were left in the dark, we must look back at the early 19th century. This was the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, a time when the world was shifting from farms to massive factories. The titans of industry faced a major problem. They needed a workforce that was punctual, obedient, and easy to manage. They found their solution in the Prussian education system, a model specifically designed to produce soldiers and workers. This system wasn't built to encourage critical thinking or financial mastery among the masses. Instead, it focused on the ability to follow instructions without question and endure repetitive tasks for hours on end. Wealthy industrialists like Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller poured millions into the General Education Board to shape this new curriculum. Their goal was simple yet profound. They wanted a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. By funding the schools, they ensured the next generation would be perfectly suited for the assembly line. Think about the structure of your typical school day and how closely it mimics a factory shift. The ringing bells, the rows of desks, and the strict permission needed just to use the restroom were all intentional. These elements were designed to condition your brain to accept a life of rigid schedules and external authority. The grading system itself was a tool for psychological conditioning rather than true intellectual measurement. You were rewarded for memorizing facts and punished for deviating from the prescribed path. This created a fear of failure that makes most adults terrified of taking financial risks later in life. Financial literacy was conspicuously absent from this curriculum for a very specific reason. If the working class understood how money actually works, they would stop trading their time for a meager paycheck. Knowledge of debt, taxes, and investing would have made the workforce far too independent for the factory owner's liking. Instead of teaching wealth creation, the system pushed the narrative of the good job as the ultimate prize. You were taught that a college degree and a steady salary were the only path to security. This narrow focus effectively blinded millions to the reality of how the global economy actually functions. This legacy continues to dominate our modern world, even though the factories of the past have largely disappeared. We are still using an outdated operating system to navigate a digital and decentralized financial landscape. The chains are no longer physical, but they are deeply embedded in the way you perceive value and labor. To understand why you think this way, we have to look back at the early 20th century. This was the era when the titans of industry needed a massive, disciplined workforce to man their expanding assembly lines. They didn't need creative geniuses or independent thinkers who questioned the status quo. They needed people who could follow instructions without hesitation. The modern school system was modeled after the Prussian military style of education. It was specifically designed to produce citizens who were obedient, punctual, and highly responsive to authority. Every bell that rings between classes is a psychological echo of the factory whistle that once governed the lives of your ancestors. Before this shift, most people were self-sufficient farmers or skilled artisans who understood the direct link between their effort and their output. The industrial era changed that by introducing the concept of trading time for a fixed, predictable wage. This fundamental shift decoupled the worker from the final product and the true value of their labor. John D. Rockefeller famously stated that he didn't want a nation of thinkers, he wanted a nation of workers. Through massive philanthropic grants, these industrial giants helped shape the curriculum that still exists in our classrooms today. They ensured that subjects like financial literacy and investment were replaced by rote memorization and standardized testing. This environment birthed the ultimate lie, that hard work alone leads to wealth. You were conditioned to believe that if you just followed the rules and saved your pennies, the system would eventually take care of you. In reality, saving currency that is constantly being devalued is a losing game that the wealthy simply do not play. By keeping the mechanics of money a mystery, the elite ensured that the working class would remain dependent on their employers. If you don't understand how debt, taxes, and inflation work, you are essentially a tenant in a financial system you can never own. This lack of knowledge is the invisible fence that keeps the employee factory running smoothly. Today, this outdated model has evolved into a sophisticated trap of consumer debt and high-interest loans. We are encouraged to borrow money we haven't earned to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. This cycle keeps the modern worker tethered to a desk, too exhausted to seek the truth about their own economic potential. The result is a society that is technically proficient but financially paralyzed. We have been trained to fear risk and crave the illusion of security above all else. But the world has changed, and the old rules of the factory no longer apply to the digital frontier we now inhabit. This digital frontier arrived much faster than the school system could ever adapt. While you were still being told to find a stable job with benefits, the very foundations of that stability began to crumble. The social contract that promised a comfortable retirement in exchange for 40 years of loyalty has been quietly torn to pieces. The first cracks appeared when the link between productivity and wages was severed decades ago. Since then, the cost of living has skyrocketed while the purchasing power of your hard-earned savings has evaporated into thin air. You are running faster and faster on a treadmill that is designed to keep you in the exact same place. You were taught that saving money was the ultimate virtue of a responsible citizen. However, in a world where central banks print trillions of dollars at the push of a button, your savings are actually a melting ice cube. The hidden tax of inflation is the silent thief that punishes the savers and rewards the masters of the system. The employee factory is now facing its own existential crisis as automation and artificial intelligence redefine the meaning of labor. The repetitive tasks you were trained to perform are being handed over to algorithms that don't need breaks or benefits. The skills that once guaranteed a middle-class life are becoming obsolete before your very eyes. This is the moment where the illusion of safety finally shatters for those paying attention. The traditional path of getting a degree and climbing a corporate ladder is no longer a shortcut to success, it is a high-interest gamble. You are being forced to realize that the safety net you were promised was actually a spider web designed to keep you stationary. You now face a brutal internal conflict between what you were told and what you are seeing with your own eyes. Your brain is still wired to seek the approval of an authority figure, yet there is no one coming to save your financial future. The realization that the system is not broken, but working exactly as intended, is a bitter pill to swallow. To survive this transition, you must undergo a radical psychological transformation. You have to unlearn the habits of a worker and adopt the mindset of an owner in a world that is increasingly volatile. The old map is leading you toward a cliff, and the only way to avoid the fall is to stop following the crowd. This is your wake-up call to stop playing a game that was rigged against you from the start. The walls of the factory are falling down, and for the first time, you can see the vast landscape of opportunity beyond them. But to step out into that light, you must first understand the new rules of wealth that they never wanted you to know. These rules are not merely suggestions, they are the survival mechanics of a digital era that has already left the classroom behind. While you were taught that a dollar saved is a dollar earned, the reality of inflation began quietly eroding your future. The stability you were promised was an illusion built on a foundation of shifting sand. The turning point arrived when the global economy detached from anything tangible, transforming your currency into a tool of debt rather than a store of value. Central banks gained the power to print prosperity for themselves while diluting the purchasing power of your hard-earned wages. This invisible tax is the primary reason why working harder no longer leads to getting ahead in the modern world. You were told to put your faith in traditional savings accounts and long-term retirement funds as the ultimate safety nets. In truth, these instruments are often designed to provide liquidity to the very institutions that keep you in debt. By the time you are allowed to touch your own money, its value has been decimated by the relentless march of rising costs. This realization is the moment the internal conflict begins, forcing you to choose between the comfort of the lie and the cold reality of the truth. You start to see that the system didn't just fail to teach you about money, it actively trained you to be a consumer of debt. Every credit card offer and high-interest loan is a brick in the wall of your own financial prison. The traditional career path is no longer a slow climb to the top, but a precarious walk across a thinning tightrope. Automation and artificial intelligence are dismantling the middle-class roles that the employee factory was built to fill. The security of a steady paycheck has become the greatest risk you can possibly take in a world that rewards agility over loyalty. There is no going back to the ignorance of the classroom once you have seen the gears of the machine in motion. The crisis of the modern worker is not a lack of effort, but a lack of the right information at the right time. To escape the cycle, you must now master the leverage and assets that the wealthy use to stay ahead of the very system they created. Your first instinct is likely to do exactly what the mainstream advisors and glossy magazines suggest. You open a basic brokerage account and start dabbling in popular stocks or mutual funds, hoping for a modest win. But you soon realize that following the herd only leads you into the same financial slaughterhouse as everyone else. You are immediately bombarded by a sea of conflicting information and self-proclaimed gurus promising overnight success. Every screen you look at screams a different strategy, from high-frequency trading to the latest speculative bubble. This deliberate chaos is designed to keep you paralyzed by indecision while the institutional players harvest your retail capital. Many people try to escape the factory by starting a side hustle, only to find they have built themselves a second prison. They trade their precious evenings and weekends for a few extra dollars, still operating under the time for money trap. Without understanding the power of leverage, you are simply an employee with two bosses instead of one. As soon as you see a glimmer of profit, the hidden gatekeepers of the system step in to take their cut. Capital gains taxes and hidden management fees begin to bleed your portfolio dry before it even has a chance to compound. You start to see that the game is structured to reward the house while you are left to shoulder all the risk. Your own brain becomes your greatest enemy, triggering a primitive panic response every time the market dips. This is the employee factory conditioning kicking in, whispering that you should retreat to the perceived safety of a savings account. You are fighting against decades of psychological programming that associates any form of volatility with total ruin. You might even try to use credit to fund your new ventures, falling headfirst into the trap of high-interest consumer debt. You were never taught the critical difference between debt that pays you and debt that eats your future. This discovery is often painful, as you watch your monthly interest payments outpace your actual earnings. You turn to traditional financial planners for help, only to find they are often just salespeople for the very institutions that created the problem. Their safe portfolios are designed to generate steady commissions for the bank, not rapid independence for you. You realize that no one is more interested in your money than the people trying to take it from you. These first attempts often end in exhaustion, leaving you feeling like the system is truly impenetrable. You start to notice an invisible ceiling that seems to prevent the average person from ever reaching the level of the elite. This is the first real barrier, and most people turn back here, convinced that the factory life was their only option. You try to dive into the world of investing or start a small business, only to find that the learning curve is steeper than any mountain. The financial jargon is a language designed to keep you on the outside, making you feel inadequate for even trying to manage your own destiny. It becomes clear that the system doesn't just withhold information, it actively obfuscates the truth to maintain its control. In your search for a shortcut, you might find yourself lured by the flashy promises of self-proclaimed gurus and overnight success stories. These paths often lead to expensive mistakes that leave your bank account drained and your spirit broken. You are forced to confront the reality that there are no magic buttons in a world built on the cold logic of compound interest and risk management. When you finally do see a bit of progress, you are met with the crushing weight of taxes and hidden fees that you never learned to navigate. You realize that the tax code is a complex map that rewards the owners of capital while penalizing the earners of wages. This discovery reveals that the game is not just about how much you make, but how much you are actually allowed to keep. The people closest to you often become the most significant barriers to your escape from the factory mindset. Their well-intentioned warnings about the dangers of the unknown act as a psychological anchor, pulling you back toward the perceived safety of the status quo. Breaking free requires not just financial courage, but the emotional strength to stand alone while everyone else is following the herd. You begin to see that consumer debt is the ultimate control mechanism, an invisible chain that keeps you tethered to a desk for decades. Every high-interest loan and credit card balance is a vote against your future self, ensuring you remain a productive cog in the machine. You realize that you have been conditioned to buy your way into a lifestyle that you haven't yet earned the right to own. Through these painful trials, a new understanding of the difference between assets and liabilities finally begins to take root. You start to see that the wealthy don't trade their time for money, they use their money to buy back their time. This is the first genuine breakthrough, a realization that changes the way you view every dollar that passes through your hands. This shift in perspective forces you to confront the most uncomfortable truth of all: your hard work is being harvested by those who understand the rules you were never taught. While you were busy perfecting your resume, the elite were perfecting the art of capital allocation and tax shielding. The gap between the worker and the owner isn't just about money, but about a fundamental difference in how they perceive the flow of value. Let's investigate the mechanics of this extraction, starting with the very currency you hold in your hand. In the traditional classroom, money is presented as a stable reward for labor, but in the real world, it is a depreciating asset designed to lose value over time. This intentional devaluation forces you to stay on the treadmill, working longer hours just to maintain the same standard of living you had a decade ago. You must ask yourself why a subject as vital as compound interest or tax strategy is completely absent from the standard curriculum. This omission is not an accident or a lack of time, it is a strategic necessity for the survival of the industrial model. If students understood the power of equity and leverage, the supply of obedient, low-cost labor would vanish overnight, collapsing the very foundations of the corporate hierarchy. The system further deepens its grip by rebranding debt as a tool for personal fulfillment and social status. You are encouraged to borrow against your future earnings to acquire liabilities that lose value the moment you take them home. This cycle of consumption creates a perpetual state of financial anxiety, ensuring that you remain too distracted by your bills to ever question the hand that feeds you. Contrast this with the playbook of the wealthy, who use debt not for consumption, but as a high-octane fuel for acquiring cash-flowing assets. They understand that in a world of fiat currency, the person who borrows to buy productive property wins, while the person who saves to buy a car loses. This is the insider secret that turns the entire concept of saving money on its head and reveals the true path to sovereignty. The employee factory also installs a psychological barrier rooted in the fear of scarcity and the need for external validation. You have been conditioned to believe that a steady paycheck is the only thing standing between you and total catastrophe. This fear-based programming makes you risk-averse, preventing you from taking the calculated leaps necessary to build a life of true abundance. When you look deeper into the legal structures of wealth, you find that the tax code is actually a series of incentives for those who provide housing, jobs, and energy. While the employee is taxed at the highest rates before they even see their money, the business owner and investor are rewarded with deductions and credits. The system is literally designed to penalize the laborer and subsidize the visionary, yet this reality is kept behind a curtain of complexity. This confrontation with the truth is where most people experience their greatest internal resistance. It is one thing to recognize that the game is rigged, but it is another entirely to take responsibility for playing a different one. You are now standing at the threshold where intellectual understanding must transform into strategic action, or you risk becoming the most well-informed prisoner in the factory. Crossing this threshold requires you to abandon the comfort of the guaranteed paycheck. You must realize that the perceived safety of a salary is actually the most dangerous dependency of all. It is a drug that numbs your ambition and keeps you from building something that truly belongs to you. While you were taught to fear debt, the elite use it as a powerful engine for growth. They understand that good debt is a tool to acquire income-producing assets that pay for themselves and more. Meanwhile, the average person is buried under bad debt, used to buy depreciating toys that lose value the moment they leave the store. The math of the factory is simple: you have a finite amount of hours to sell, which means your income has a hard ceiling. To break the glass, you must shift your focus from earned income to passive and portfolio income. This is the only way to decouple your survival from your physical presence and finally achieve true sovereignty. Inflation acts as a silent vacuum, sucking the value out of every hour you spent working in the past. If you don't own assets that appreciate faster than the currency devalues, you are essentially working for free for several months every year. The system counts on your ignorance of this hidden theft to keep the wheels of the economy turning at your expense. Many stay trapped because the factory provides a gilded cage of minor luxuries and social validation. We are conditioned to seek status through consumption rather than through the accumulation of freedom. Breaking free means being willing to look poor to the world while you are actually becoming wealthy in the shadows. This confrontation forces you to admit that your current strategy is a relic of a world that no longer exists. You cannot win a modern war with outdated weapons and a map from the 19th century. It is time to discard the old curriculum and master the high-leverage skills that define the new era of wealth. You finally feel like you have the master key to the gates of the employee factory. The path forward seems illuminated by the harsh light of truth, and the chains of your previous conditioning appear to be dissolving. It feels as though the hard part is over and your transition from worker to owner is now inevitable. You might believe that simply knowing these mechanics is enough to guarantee your liberation. With the blueprints of the elite in your hands, the fear that once paralyzed you has been replaced by a surge of newfound confidence. You are ready to close this chapter and step into a world where you are finally the architect of your own wealth. But as you prepare to take that first definitive step, a crushing weight begins to settle back onto your shoulders. You realize that the system isn't just a set of rules, but a living, breathing entity that adapts to your every move. The initial excitement fades into a cold realization that knowing the truth and surviving the truth are two very different things. The sheer scale of the machine you are fighting against starts to feel overwhelming and insurmountable. Every attempt to pivot is met with a new layer of complexity and a fresh set of obstacles designed to drain your remaining energy. You find yourself exhausted, wondering if the factory is simply too powerful to ever truly escape. Perhaps this is where the story ends for most people, with a head full of knowledge but a life that remains unchanged. You begin to tell yourself that maybe the safe path wasn't so bad after all, compared to the brutal reality of this uphill battle. The dream of independence starts to look like a beautiful mirage that is slowly receding into the distance. It's tempting to accept that you were born a cog and that you will die a cog, regardless of what you've learned today. You might even feel a sense of bitter closure, believing that the game is so rigged that even the players who know the rules are destined to lose. This is the moment where most viewers turn off the screen and return to their assigned stations in the factory. You look at your bank account and your calendar, seeing the same old patterns of survival staring back at you. Despite all the provocative facts and deep dive insights, the walls of your cubicle feel thicker and more permanent than ever before. It seems the factory has won, and your brief moment of enlightenment was just a temporary glitch in the system. However, there is one final, terrifying piece of the puzzle that we haven't discussed, and it changes everything you think you know about the exit strategy. All the knowledge in the world is useless if you are still carrying the one hidden tracking device the factory installed in your mind. Without addressing this final mechanism, you are merely a prisoner who knows how the locks work but still lacks the strength to turn the key. The weight of this realization often leads to a crushing sense of paralysis that feels like a final defeat. You see the bars of the cage clearly now, but the sheer scale of the institutional machinery makes resistance feel utterly futile. It is the moment when most people accept their fate, resigning themselves to a life of quiet desperation within the factory walls. You might tell yourself that the dream of independence was just a youthful fantasy, a brief rebellion against an inescapable reality. The comfort of the predictable paycheck begins to look less like a chain and more like a lifeline in a chaotic world. You start to believe that perhaps the factory owners were right all along, and safety is the highest virtue a worker can achieve. This is where the story usually ends for the vast majority, as they settle back into the rhythmic hum of the production line. They trade their grand ambitions for minor comforts, convincing themselves that they have found a way to balance their soul with their survival. The narrative of your life seems to have reached its conclusion, a predictable loop of labor and consumption that will carry you to the end. But this surrender comes with a hidden price that slowly erodes the very core of your identity over the coming decades. Every day you spend ignoring the truth is a day you spend reinforcing the walls of your own psychological prison. The silence of the factory floor becomes a constant reminder of the potential you traded away for the illusion of security. Just as you are about to close the book on your freedom, you notice a subtle inconsistency in the system's logic that you missed before. The tracking device in your mind isn't just a monitor, it is a broadcast signal that you have been conditioned to obey without question. You realize that the strength to turn the key doesn't come from your muscles, but from your willingness to stop listening to the signal. The final mechanism of control isn't the debt, the taxes, or even the lack of education, it is the manufactured belief that you need the system's permission to leave. You have been waiting for a sign or a savior to open the gate, never realizing that the gate has been unlocked this entire time. The ultimate secret of the elite is that they didn't escape the factory, they simply realized the factory only exists as long as you agree to be its product. The realization that you do not need permission is the moment the entire architecture of the employee factory begins to crumble. This is the pivot point where you stop being a resource to be managed and start becoming a force to be reckoned with. By withdrawing your psychological consent, you effectively dismantle the invisible walls that have confined your potential for years. Everything the school system omitted now fits into a singular, cohesive picture of strategic control. The lack of financial literacy was never a failure of the curriculum, but a triumph of industrial engineering designed to keep you dependent. When you finally see the classroom as a training ground for obedience, the path to sovereignty becomes a simple matter of intentional unlearning. You now understand that the currency you were taught to save is actually a tool for your own economic dilution. By shifting your focus from accumulating paper to acquiring productive assets, you flip the script on the inflationary machine. You are no longer swimming against the current of devaluation, but riding the wave of asset appreciation that the elite have used for centuries. The fear of debt, once a heavy shackle, transforms into a high-performance engine when applied with the precision of an investor. You stop using credit to fund a lifestyle you cannot afford and start using leverage to build a foundation that pays for your life. This fundamental shift in utility is what separates those who work for money from those who make money work for them. The complexity of the tax code is no longer a barrier, but a roadmap for those who contribute to the economy's growth. By aligning your actions with the incentives provided for business owners and investors, you legally and ethically keep more of what you earn. You have moved from the highest taxed bracket of the laborer to the incentivized realm of the visionary. The internal tracking device of scarcity and external validation is finally deactivated through the power of self-reliance. You no longer look to a corporate hierarchy to define your worth or provide your daily security. This newfound autonomy allows you to make decisions based on long-term freedom rather than short-term survival. The employee factory loses its power the moment you realize that your labor was never the product, your compliance was. Breaking free is not about a single grand gesture, but a series of calculated moves that reclaim your time, your capital, and your mind. You are finally integrating the lessons of the real world into a strategy that guarantees your independence. This is the true climax of your journey, where the theoretical knowledge of the past becomes the tactical reality of your future. Every concept we have explored, from the industrial origins of schooling to the mechanics of fiat currency, converges into this single moment of clarity. You are standing on the edge of a new life, equipped with the tools the system tried to keep hidden. These tools are not just financial instruments, but a complete restructuring of your daily existence. You must stop viewing yourself as a resource to be managed and start acting as a sovereign entity that governs its own value. The grand revelation is that the economy isn't a force of nature that happens to you, but a landscape you can actively shape through the strategic use of leverage. To dismantle the factory's influence, you must replace your reliance on a single paycheck with a diversified portfolio of cash-flowing assets. This transition requires you to apply the high-leverage skills that school ignored, such as understanding tax codes and the power of compounding. By redirecting your energy from climbing the corporate ladder to building your own infrastructure, you effectively resign from the industrial model forever. The industrial-era curriculum was designed to create a predictable workforce, but the modern world rewards the unpredictable visionary. You are now aligning your actions with the digital age, where information and speed are the new gold standards. This alignment allows you to bypass the traditional gatekeepers who once controlled the flow of wealth and opportunity. Your compliance was the fuel that kept the factory running, but your defiance is the spark that ignites your personal revolution. Reclaiming your mind means rejecting the scarcity mindset that was programmed into you from a young age. When you stop asking for permission to succeed, the barriers that once seemed insurmountable begin to dissolve into thin air. You now understand that debt is a tool for growth and that the tax code is a roadmap for the wealthy. By using these mechanisms to acquire productive equity, you are playing the same game as the elite, but on your own terms. This is the moment where the abstract concepts of capital allocation become the concrete foundation of your lasting financial legacy. The journey from the assembly line to the boardroom of your own life is finally complete. You have unlearned the myths of the employee factory and mastered the hidden language of money. The world no longer looks like a series of obstacles, but a vast field of opportunities waiting for your command. The command you now hold over your financial destiny is the ultimate legacy of this unlearning process. You are no longer just a participant in the economy, but a creator of value who understands the hidden architecture of wealth. This transformation ensures that the cycle of industrial dependency ends with you, protecting future generations from the same factory walls. As you step into this new reality, the noise of the old system begins to fade into a distant hum. The frantic race for survival is replaced by a calculated pursuit of expansion and long-term stability. You have traded the fragile security of a paycheck for the robust resilience of a diversified asset base that works while you sleep. However, the exit from the factory is not a destination, but the beginning of a much larger evolution. The world is shifting faster than ever, and the strategies that worked yesterday are constantly being rewritten by new technologies. Staying ahead requires a commitment to perpetual learning that the traditional school system could never provide or even conceptualize. While you have mastered the mechanics of money, the next challenge lies in mastering the psychology of the new era. Understanding how to navigate the digital landscape and decentralized finance is the next frontier for the sovereign individual. The factory was just the first boss in a much larger game of global influence and technological mastery. To truly thrive in this landscape, you must look beyond the traditional definitions of assets and liabilities. The rise of intangible capital and the attention economy represents a shift as profound as the Industrial Revolution itself. If you thought the factory was complex, the digital matrix of the 21st century offers even deeper layers of control and opportunity. The journey into this new frontier requires a different set of maps and a more advanced understanding of human behavior. We must now explore how the elite are using these new digital tools to consolidate power in ways the old school system never imagined. The exit was just the start, now it is time to learn how to dominate the new world order.